I ended up here. So both thank you and...
It's one of the big moves that I made.
Yeah. Well, remains to be seen. So I want to build on just setting the scene a little bit for Megillat HaAtzmaut, and then show how a little bit, just as I think Rav David set it up really perfectly in terms of the current situation in which we find ourselves. Because I'm going to maintain here, should I stand just so we can see each other better? Yeah, okay. I'm going to maintain that I think at the core of this crisis in which we find ourselves, how many of you have been following on the news a little bit? Anybody go to a protest here in Northern California? Okay, tomorrow, I was going to say the chair of ARZA, one of our leaders, Daryl Messinger, is going to be speaking after, yeah, there you go, Saving Israeli Democracy. It's after the congregation meeting, okay, so don't worry, like you can get both. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's at 2 p.m. in Sunnyvale. Yeah, and so I encourage you to go, and I say that as the movement. But Ben Gurion had this vision, and it's so interesting, the God piece and you know, sort of the theological or sanctification piece of everything that's going, of Israel in general, but specifically of the Declaration of Independence. How do we say the Declaration in Hebrew? No, it's not HaARZA, actually. Huh? Megillah. Yeah. Megillat HaAtzmaut. Okay? What's a Megillah? A scroll. Okay, that Ben Gurion had, and this is the magic of Israel, is that it's being reinvented with the Jewish structure. Okay, with the Jewish traditional model. Okay, that can then, even if the content is secular, in Hebrew we would say a hatrasa. How do we say that in English? Like a latris, like to almost as a rebellion, almost as a stick it to you. I'm going to use the format that we know from Jewish life with secular content. So Ben Gurion wanted to invent a new holiday. Okay, and he called it Yom HaAtzmaut, right, Independence Day, right? What do holidays have in the Jewish world? Okay, well, first of all, we have a tefillah, right? Okay, there's a ritual element, and we have liturgy, okay? We have specific words that we say on holidays, right? Specific brachot, specifically we say Hallel, and we add that in. That's a question in some circles whether you do say Hallel or you don't on Yom HaAtzmaut, okay? You have a festive meal, right? I call it the Yom HaAtzmaut sacrifice, because the tradition, or Korban Yom HaAtzmaut, because the tradition in Israel is to have massive barbecues, okay? And you can even see, like some major parks, like in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, you can see the smoke wafting up above. And I said, oh, this is what it must have been like to be, at the temple in Jerusalem with all these sacrifices going on, and you smell it. But just like on all of the festival holidays, we have a scroll, we have a Megillah that's associated with it. Okay, like on Purim, we read Esther, Tisha B'Av, right? Eicha, Lamentations, so on. Right, in Pesach, we read Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. You get the point, okay? And so the Megillat HaAtzmaut would actually be the 6th Megillah that we have in our canon, and that this document would be part of sort of the evolution of our sacred Jewish bookshelf. Okay? Could be somewhat presumptuous, okay, or Yomrani to say that, like, well, I'm going to add to the sacred Jewish bookshelf. But he did commission a sofer stam, okay, a scribe, to write this Megillah. You can see the print, okay, what it looks like. And next time you're in Rabbi Nico's office, you can see it hanging on the wall there. He commissioned a sofer to write it on a cloth, right, on a piece of parchment, okay? There's a whole famous story about the actual declaration when it was just a blank piece of paper and he kind of, read it. But that it would do that. So what does it actually do? Stan mentioned the values that it mentioned. That's the second half. It's divided in two. In fact, the first half is the story, is our Zionist narrative, sort of, is the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Okay? And if you weren't clear as to what our narrative is, it's going to tell you. Right here it is in English. Should I make that a little smaller just so everyone can see that? Yeah. Okay, good. Right? That says, Kan be'eretz Yisrael kam ha'am Yehudi. Right? Like here in the land of Israel is the birthplace of the Jewish people. Okay? This is a narrative. What is a narrative not? Fact, right? Okay, because you can debate that. Were the people of Israel actually born in the land of Israel? Right? Where did we get the Torah? Sinai. Yeah, you're like, Amazon? No. I'm like, no. We got it at Sinai, okay, which is not in Israel. For like, yes, 15 years, okay, right? 67 to 82, right? Okay, it was. It wasn't at the time when, we received the Torah there at Ma'amad Har Sinai. Also, our Judaism is a post-Talmudic Judaism. Where is the major Talmud that the authoritative Talmud compiled? Bavel, right? In Babylon, which is decidedly not Israel. Okay, so you can argue with the narrative, but just understand that this was important for us to lay down. Just like if you read, in the beginning the earth was created in 6 days and God rested on the seventh, you're like, well, actually, I'm a astrophysicist and I don't think that that's actually how it happened. You're like, okay, it's a narrative, right? That's a story that we are telling ourselves, and it comes basically very quickly from the formation of the Jewish people up until the Zionist enterprise in 1897 through to the Holocaust and then the establishment of the state. Very important to, canonize that and put that in our narrative. Now, what are we saying? In addition to it not being historical fact, okay, the values that we put in are incredibly important. However, what are they also not? Right, and Stan mentioned this too, they are not legally binding. Right? It is decidedly not a constitution. So when we read, okay, that you can see that, right? That it is, that it will be open for Jewish immigration, for the ingathering of exiles, blah, blah, blah. And here are the values. It'll be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, okay, which we, Reformed Jews, we hold up those values very high. And social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex, and will guarantee freedom of religion, conscious language, education, and culture. Okay? Sounds good, right? Right? And I think that is a big debate, whether these are, sort of Western universal progressive values that not everyone agreed with, okay, based on, if you compare it to the American Declaration of Independence and all of those things. I'll just say that 2 Sundays ago, I had the opportunity to read this in Jerusalem at the Kotel, okay, with trope marks, okay, with cantillation, okay, that they put in. And is anybody like a geek about trope? Anybody? Okay, so a cantor, yeah, I just say, okay, yeah, I'll just say that the first half that tells the story is in Megillah trope, and the second half that's prophetic is in Haftarah trope. Okay, we're clever people, like we're smart. So this is a ritual reading it, but let me take you through a little bit of the process and about the constitutionality of it and bring us up to what we are, because let's look at what's happening right now. So we had this declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel, and it says in it, in paragraph 19, no later than October 1st, 1948, we will have a constitution. Okay? That's got a lot of late fees at the public library, okay? That's like, it says it outlines that we will have a constitution. We did establish a committee, a constitutional committee. Okay, Vadat Chukah. How many of you have ever sat in a committee before? I promise, it is the best way to get anything done. Okay, but essentially, what was the reason that the committee had all those shelved constitutional drafts? Right? Why couldn't they agree on having a constitution? What do you think? Just a shout out. This is Okay, too many voices. Well, yes, I mean that's anything, right? What was, what were these competing visions? Because some people came and said, we have a constitution. And it's right behind those two doors. Okay, right. Right, and it says here, right, would unleash a divisive conflict between religious and state authorities. That is, at the essence, the center of this conflict. To say, wait a second, we don't need something that's going to be really binding, or I think any lawyers in the crowd here that has supreme legal authority. That is what a constitution does, and that's what it gives. We have one in the United States of America, and everything else will be judged by that. So let's look. What happened? Okay, we need to have a constitution to ensure religious freedom, to safeguard the principle of separation of powers. Okay, in America we call that C and B, right? Checks and balances. Okay, incredibly important and should be the foundation of democracy. Okay, and here it is, the supremacy of civil law right there. But those that said, well, it's nice, but it's not really a good time for it right now, and we're fighting a war, right? It would be, politically divisive. By the way, we spend a lot of time as Reform Jews in these institutions that Stan has many, great mileage there being, I think, it feels like gaslighting, essentially, when someone says, yeah, be a lamb, and for the sake of unity, just compromise on all of your values, okay? If you wouldn't mind, why do you care about if your rabbis can convert people? Or for the sake of Jewish unity, wouldn't you? You're in favor of unity, aren't you? We have to. When Nico and I were there 2 weeks ago, we're sitting in these committees where they said, well, for unity, it might be offensive to some people to recognize LGBTQ, the community, and so, and we're saying, are you out of your mind? No, these are values, and we're not compromising them, and that's what I spend a lot of time doing, and Stan has spent many years doing. So let's look at what happened. Can I just give you like a brief technical thing? Sheldon, we're okay. In that, they started the process of building out a constitution, okay? It's called the Harari decision to say, wait, let's just start chapter by chapter, and we'll put it, law by law, okay? And it'll constitute what we call a basic law, a chok yesod, okay? And those there's a special category that are meant to have sort of constitutional weight. And we have that. We have a bunch of them. There are 13 right now. I'll just give them to you. They're coming up. You can see some of them right now. Okay, the latest one was in 2018 called the nation-state law. How many of you remember that one that passed? Okay, very, very controversial. By the way, to which our movement said, why do you need a basic law stating that Israel is the nation-state of the Jewish people? We have it in the Declaration of Independence, right? We have it right there already. Why do we need that? And you can get sort of the ideological lines under which this fell. I want to focus on just one piece of legislation here. In 1992, by the way, with the Likud majority Knesset, they passed, before Rabin was elected, okay, they passed a law called Chok Kvod Adam V'Cheruto, a law called of human dignity and liberty, essentially maintaining human rights in Israel, right? Because that's the third aspect of what a democracy should be. Should be majority rule, power of the people, okay? Should be checks and balances or supervision and limitations over different branches of government, right? That's, how many of you remember, like, you ever read Alexis de Tocqueville, like, way back in the day at some point, where he warned against the tyranny of the majority, okay? You don't want that. And the third is that democracy should protect universal human rights for people, right? Even civil rights, I would say. Okay, so that's what this law said. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time is a guy called Aharon Barak. Incredible figure, okay? Holocaust survivor, came to Israel as a young child, as a 12, 13-year-old, and rose to the ranks of being the Chief Justice. And he basically said, it was a court case in 2005 1995 involving a bank case called Bank Mizrahi. That's what everyone knows. Oh, the Bank Mizrahi case. Okay, that gave the opportunity for Barak to establish judicial review. Lawyers, anyone? You may remember this in, no one's a lawyer here? Okay, wow. It's usually not the case in a Jewish crowd, but okay. They're just not admitting it. Yeah. So we have this in the United States. It happened in just a while. Like it happened 220 years ago in 1803, a case called Marbury versus Madison, right? Okay, where we established judicial review, where that would have, that would be a ruling through which all other rulings would be judged. Okay? And that is the case right now in the Israeli Supreme Court, and that is at the source of what many are deeply upset about, including the current justice minister, a guy called Yariv Levin, and another member of Knesset, a guy called Simcha Rotman. You should know these names if you haven't. He's a Knesset member, he's not a minister, and he is the head of the Constitution Justice and Legal Committee, essentially, Vadat Chok Chuka Umishpat. Okay, and he's the one who chooses what legislation goes before the Knesset. Incidentally, I will say that the immediate past chair of that committee, okay, is member of Knesset Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who's the first Reform rabbi to be in the Knesset, and you can see him and hear from him live here at the Palo Alto JCC. Oh, is he speaking in Hebrew? Oh, okay. Even if it's worth it. So the question that we're looking at, and essentially what Rothman and Levine, and Rothman is a pure ideologue on this. He's written 2 books about the role of the Supreme Court. Okay, is this basic conflicting of values? Should a democracy be supervision and limitation over the parliament and the government? Okay, or should the rule of the people and the Knesset should decide? Okay, I'd like to say that we, as a movement at least, are on the side of against the tyranny of the majority, the protection of rights, and that we desperately want this Declaration of Independence. Right, it may need some refreshing. Right, as you said, it was cobbled together in 2-3 weeks. We can go down the rabbit hole on some of the different versions that were proposed and some different ideas. It's fascinating, but that we want that to be the basis, especially good old paragraph 13 that I showed you with the rights and what it's going to protect, to be the basis of a constitution. Okay. And what's resulted in that is, massive protests. Okay, as you can see, this is what, the aerial views. The best one actually is, it's like a 200-foot long copy of the Declaration of Independence that you can see from outer space. Okay, not really, but okay, you get the point. And that's what it's over. And Ehud Barak, by the way, just so you know, in February, the president of our movement, of the Reform movement in North America, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, spoke at the protest in Tel Aviv. It was kind of like a typical Friday night crowd here at Shir Chadash. There were 160,000 people there, okay, that he spoke to, and that was an important message in Hebrew, important message for us as a movement to say we're standing in solidarity with those who see, Judaism and democracy on the same plane. And afterwards, Ehud Barak, a former prime minister, also spoke, and he said, listen, the dividing line is pretty simple. You're either in the D9 camp, D9 is fancy Hebrew for bulldozer, okay, or you're in the Megillat HaAtzmaut camp, okay? Either you're trying to bulldoze through legislation, which he's saying is not pure of heart because there are many different agendas that we can see from the various parties that make up the current coalition, okay? Or you're in the Megillat HaAtzmaut camp, which basically establishes human rights for everyone. Okay. What I think is important, and with this I probably have to wind down. Maybe we have, time for a few questions or something like that, and then Stan will correct him. Yeah. Is that first of all, we have a role in this. Okay. What I think is critically important to understand is that Israel is the project of the Jewish people. I hear often, we as North American Jews, except for those of us who, hold Israeli passports, okay, we're not citizens, we don't vote, we don't pay taxes, and we don't serve in the army. Okay, so what position does that give us to dictate what should happen in Israel? Okay, it's a fair argument. Okay, Except, here's the important piece, right? We're not dictating security policy, okay? I would never presume to do that for a place that I don't live, and especially if we didn't, we're not sending our kids, to serve, and we shouldn't do that. However, we do want to be involved, and we have the opportunity to be involved in this intra-Jewish conversation, in this moment where we can ask ourselves together, what are the values in which we want the state of Israel to be, and we want ourselves to live by, okay? We fight for the same things in Jerusalem that we fight for in Washington, D.C., okay? And we wouldn't want those to be different, okay? I meet a lot of, especially young people, who tell me right now, oh, Israel and Zionism are antithetical to social justice. And I'm saying, well, wait a second. Would you say the United States of America is antithetical to social justice? They say, no, well, there are, there's the MAGA group, and then there are other people protesting that group. I said, okay, why do you see that as different than what's happening in Israel? Okay? That's no different. Okay, and if you remember a date way long ago in American history, sometime around November 9th, 2016, okay, when it was clear that Donald Trump won the election, there was an outpouring of response from people who didn't vote for the Trump, and you may be among them, I don't know, who said, okay, we are going to support civil society in America. We're going to give donations to the ACLU and to the ADL and to Planned Parenthood and to all sorts of organizations that are working to, maintain democracy and freedom and equality and justice and all those things. So much that the ACLU raised 7,000 times its annual development, okay, its annual fundraising in that 1 month of November. Okay, so my response is to say, why should that be different in Israel right now? Okay, that if we're unhappy or we want to push back against what the government is proposing, okay, and right now the Knesset session started just this past Sunday, the summer session, in which the legislative agenda is going back, in place. There are 155 different bills, different proposals that are being pushed through. The most prominent ones that are going first are the ones about the appointments for judges, essentially, how judges are appointed. That's a major theme. In addition, something called the override clause, which will say that if it passes, it will say that the Knesset can override the Supreme Court, including those basic laws that I showed you, with a simple majority, right? A 51% majority. We call it a 2-to-1. So if only 3 people show up at the Knesset any one day, 2 beats 1. Okay, and we think that should be. A friend of mine asked me, he's like, well, what do you think the number should be? And I said, well, I think if you're going to override the Supreme Court, it should be however many it takes to also include the opposition in an override, because that is, at least resembles some sort of a consensus. Just like in the United States, how do you amend the Constitution? Bicameral, right? Okay, 2/3 in each house and 2/3 of the states. Okay, not something that could happen overnight. Okay, right? That's a lengthy process, and that is incredibly important, right? And all this is happening right now. So we, as a movement, are trying to say, well, wait a sec. Let's support this civil society. I'm not going to take you through all these different, but I'll just say, that there are these different agendas, and then, one is, I mentioned, Rothman and Levine. There they are. The Haredi agenda, you should be aware, because right now the issue is the law to exempt them from army service. Okay, and that is why they are insisting upon this low majority or simple majority override clause. But in the meantime, we're looking at serious laws that, like, when you think about a Jewish state, okay, what does it mean? It says that, there was a law passed just now over Pesach that we can't bring in chametz into a hospital, okay, during Pesach out of sensitivity. Could we just ask nicely, as this sign in Hebrew says, or do we have to, legislate it? Yeah, exactly. There's a big question right now about electricity production, okay? They just invented a gadget, essentially, that will capture electricity that was not produced on Shabbat, okay? And these are the kinds of things that we're looking at. And I'll just say, you know, why is this important to us? Because, right, we want Israel to be a Jewish state that gives freedom of religion and freedom from religion as well. And that's, we think that's well, so it depends on what we mean by Jewish, okay? And I see this a lot with students especially who say, oh, I don't think a state should have a religion. And it's, right. And we're saying, okay, just, when we say a Jewish state, we also mean character and values, but we also mean the Jews as a people, okay? Who we are, the notion of peoplehood, right? Just like the French have a country called France, and Americans have a country called America, right? And the Jews have a country called Israel, right? Israel has a country called Israel. And so that's just to clarify that. We're looking at what it means for people who used to be on the fringe of Israeli society now having to take responsibility, right, for being in the majority. And remember, you know, Zionism was a revolutionary movement. What's worse for revolutionaries than losing? Yeah, winning sometimes. Because revolutionaries can turn from being revolutionaries now into bureaucrats. Okay, and we were all to fight against the British mandate, and we want to bring them up. And now we have to figure out how the post office works. Okay, how do we do streets and sanitation and set up welfare, education, healthcare, all those things that, like, you know, we are completely ideologically driven, and that's it. We're working on customer service now. That's coming to Israel soon. I'm just kidding. Okay, but you can see the agenda here. This is the National Religious Party, or the Religious Zionist Party. I want to call them the Zealous Party. Okay, and these two guys, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, you should also be familiar with them, who are driving an agenda basically of, okay, we're missing that piece, basically of saying we want to have separate rules for Jews and for non-Jews in Israel. And that's I think, part of the danger. And you can't avoid that, this is from a few weeks ago, that Netanyahu is also embroiled in his own you know, conflict, in his own issue. I want to just end, and here I'll just stop this. We can just, oh yeah, okay. Okay, we can. Here, I'll just unplug it. Okay, I just want to end by first of all thanking you, because all of you who are members of ARZA, by clicking that box on your dues statement, okay, that enables us to be there on the ground. It enables us to raise our voices on behalf of our, we like to round up and say, you know, 2 million Reformed Jews in North America, and it also enables us to support our movement on the ground in Israel, right? Our Israeli Reform movement, of which, you know, Stan and Risa, and Nico and I, and then Noga, you know, we're all products of that movement, and they are the ones every Saturday night not only leading the protests and being part of that, but we also make sure to lead Havdalah before the protests. Okay, why is that? And we do it publicly, and, you know, in every city, and people are coming in droves, because we're saying our Jewish identity and our advocacy, our activism for democracy are not separate. Okay, that's the same, right? That's all part of it. Right? And when we, you know, fill in the famous phrase of Rav Kook, where he said, "Hayashan yitchadesh v'chadash yitkadesh," okay, that the old shall be made new, and the new shall be sanctified or made holy. Okay, that's what we're all about. Okay, that's why your support is so critical, and that's why what you do in your congregation, and what you do in the broader, you know, in the Bay Area at large, here, and even in North America, what we tell our elected representatives, okay, I'm looking at Diane, right, in the JCRC, formerly, what we tell our elected representatives is really important, Okay, that we tell them that yes, we have we are Zionists. We're committed to a secure Jewish and democratic state, and we want you to be also. Okay, that's really important. So I want to thank you for being involved here, and I know I have no doubt that with Nico now you will continue that and build on that. That is so incredibly important. I also, if you want to subscribe, I write a weekly thing that we send out because Nico, I was looking at this crowd here, and I said, you know what you guys need is one more email in your inbox on a Friday morning, okay, where you can follow along and there's opportunities to get involved, folks. As I have to make my way out. I just want to say that this crisis that we're facing in Israel is unprecedented. That there have been lots of protests and lots of okay. There've been huge crises. Yeah.
You think this is the biggest thing? Every generation has had that crisis.
So okay, maybe not unprecedented, yes. And we look at the famous protests in 1983 against the Lebanon War, and with Rabbi and throughout Oslo, and I've never seen. I think that the right wing, at least the coalition, anticipated that this would dissipate after a few weeks, that the protesters would experience some sort of fatigue, and to say, okay, Saturday night again, should we get a babysitter? Should we call, are we going to go out to the street? I don't think that they anticipate that it would continue 18 weeks now, okay, including during the week a number of days of disruption or this. I don't disagree with you that there have been massive, the Lavon affair and all these things throughout history. However, I think that we are seeing something that we actually truly haven't seen. Even comparing it to the 2011 tent protest, which lasted a month, 6 weeks, on the streets of Tel Aviv and many other cities around. Okay, I think that we are seeing something, and I don't think the answer is clear as to what's going to happen. There are a number of scenarios. I won't go into all of them right now. Okay. I do think, and this is my analysis, and you can argue, I do think that the protesters have made a significant impact on the country, whether you think the tactics are kosher or not, okay? It's all a question of where the line is. And I want to say that our movement is playing a role not only in reinventing what it means to be I'll get to it in one second, what it means to be Jewish in the Jewish state, okay? But also having a civic engagement there and having this responsibility that says, okay, our Torah tells us we should celebrate Shabbat, okay, but it also tells us how to treat other people. It also tells us, sort of how we have to live in community. So with that, I want to just again thank you, and we need your involvement. We need all of you to, check that box in members of ARZA. And I want to thank Rav Davids. All you should get this book, Deepening the Dialogues, and hopefully you'll be able to study it. It's a great book club to do. And it's just been such an honor to be with you this Shabbat as you install your new, wonderful, incredible, charismatic, you get the point, Rabbi Nico Sokolovsky, who's, he's going to take you places, man. He's going to go. And I really look forward to continuing this conversation.